Morning and welcome to another episode of Healing Juntas podcast. My name is Irene Oseguera and I am the host of this podcast. I wanted to welcome you guys back. I have been on a little hiatus because I had to get my wisdom teeth removed. I did a little bit of traveling and a couple other things that I just needed to get kind of sorted out in a personal and professional way. So I really appreciate everybody hanging with me and being understanding that, I needed to take a little bit of time for myself. But that being said, we're going to jump into this week's episode, which is about Men's Mental Health Month, which is June. Um, this is really going to be diving into a lot of the traditional expectations around male presenting individuals, as well as, the idea of machismo, which is a term in Spanish to, we'll get into the actual definition, but a term in Spanish that pretty much has this idea of what men should be in a very like stereotypical sense. So we're gonna get into that. Yes, it's gonna lean towards, the Hispanic experience, obviously, as I am Hispanic and that's my immediate experience, but these can often transcend the Hispanic experience and be, any minority that could have experienced these kind of stereotypical expectations placed on them and how that affects their mental health in the long run. So we're going to be getting into that today in today's episode. Before we get into that, I want to remind everybody that the information provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. If you are in need of any particular mental health resources, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to help you get connected. But this podcast does not substitute professional mental health support. So please, 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 if you are in need, make sure you're reaching out to get the support needed. In my Instagram at healing_juntas, you can go in and on my highlights, I have a resource tab and I usually put the national resources, even some state specific ones that you can access if you need to, some directories, things like that. But if there is anything in particular you need, please feel free to reach out. With all that being said, now we're going to get into it. So this episode's title is called More Than Strong: Machismo, Silence, and Men's Mental Health. And we're really looking into how machismo and traditional masculinity impacts men's mental health, especially in the Hispanic and Latino communities. So we're going to be talking about some research, some different stories, and different actionable steps that we can take to help support members of this particular community. Um, so to get started, I want to talk about what happens when strength becomes silence. And the idea behind this is that a lot of times we have this expectation that our men need to be um, like they need to be the protectors. They need to be, not talk about their emotions, not cry, right? These very stereotypical things, but unfortunately, they're not just stereotypes. We often see this, especially in the Hispanic community, but in minority communities in general. Men are not given the privilege or the space to express their emotions in a healthy outlook. So what does it come up as? Um, there's a lot of substance use. There's a lot of domestic violence. There's a lot of um, alcoholism, anger, aggression, different things like that because the emotions are not giving a proper space to be released in, and they're also not being um, allowed to be discussed in general, right? You're weak or you're not man enough or you're acting like a woman if you talk about these kind of things. So I really want to emphasize the importance of normalizing the idea of mental health and giving our men a space to be free to discuss these things. Um, and for those that don't know, we're gonna get into it a little bit more, but the term machismo um, is defined as a set of cultural expectations for Latino or Hispanic men that value dominance, stoicism, control, and emotional suppression. So I just want you to take a second and really think about what that means. Um, to have a value that genuinely, with whole heart, say it with your chest, they do not want you to talk about your emotions, right? The literal definition is emotional suppression. Um, so that is a huge, huge impacting factor on our Hispanic and minority men. Um, it's just extremely difficult for them just to be able to open up and talk and feel their feelings. A lot of them don't even know how to acknowledge and feel the feelings that they have because of this stigma that's been placed on them to be man enough, right? Um, and just to give you like a little research tidbit, studies show that Hispanic and Latino men endorsing traditional machismo are significantly less likely to seek mental health services. Why? Because they're often taught they need to be the provider, the protector, but not the one that can actually need help themselves. So, again, this is just like extremely difficult and heavy. Um, to imagine that we put this kind of weight on our men and expect them to go through life without having any sort of healthy outlet. Um, and that's just the expectation, right? Latinos in general, we have this expectation. This is literally our definition of what it means to be a man. And I think it's just so toxic. Um, again, on a personal and a professional level. I've never liked the idea of machismo. I've always been a huge advocate of mental health um, for anybody and everybody, but especially I think we often overlook and under discuss the need for mental health services with masculine presenting individuals. Um, yeah, so that's something we're definitely going to get into more, but I wanted to give you guys some like genuine facts, some actual statistics about men's mental health. Um, Trigger warning, we are going to be discussing some hot and heavy topics. So if this is something that's not comfortable for you, skip through the stats part. We don't have to get into it. But for the very first one, suicide. Men die by suicide 4 to 5 times more often than women. Latino men in particular, ages 15 to 35, have rising rates of suicide. This is coming from the CDC. Depression. Men are underdiagnosed due to atypical symptoms such as anger, withdrawal, or workaholism. Um, male docu Male dominated occupations, so 13 to 15% prevalence of depression. So again, we're going really, really high with these numbers, right? 13 to 25% of all male dominated fields are, showing that they have symptoms of depression. Substance use. Men account for 70% of all substance use admissions. Latino men disproportionately face barriers due to dual diagnosis, care of substance use, and mental illness. And last but not least, stigma. Seeking help is often seen as a weakness under traditional masculine frameworks. Um, yeah, this is heavy. This is really heavy. And I think we don't talk about it enough to understand that our men often have to deal with a lot of different things that are very gender specific, right? It's very gender specific to expect the man not to speak about their feelings, but we do give that leeway to women. Yes, mental health is stigmatized regardless of gender, but there is a double standard placed against men that you need to listen, but you cannot be the one to express. So I think it's just something that we really need to keep in consideration when we are talking to the men in our lives. How do we support you? How do we uplift you? How do we listen to you and help them feel safe to speak about these kind of things, right? Um, so I just wanted to share a little tidbit about like what this looks like in real life, right? For example, I grew up in a very interesting environment. When I lived with my dad definitely tended to embrace a lot of the machismo um, kind of behaviors and idealistic kind of tendencies, if you will. He was always the angry, quick to react, women had to do everything. Um, just, you know, I don't even know how to really explain it, but it was just this intense need to dominate and to be on top and to not allow the people around you to experience emotions or weakness because that was beneath him. I never remember my dad talking about his feelings. I never remember him um, being kind and loving and caring. He was just kind of a bulldozer. Like, if you expressed any kind of emotions, you were weak. Um, and it was just a really nasty way to grow up. And I think, um, honestly, it kind of affected the way I see men in the world today. I often, in my younger years, I felt like if you were a man, you needed to be hard and you shouldn't speak about your emotions. And that was like, you were so feminine if you talked about your feelings. Like, why is that even a thing? Um, and now as a professional, I'm like, talk about your emotions. I love it. Right? But it took a lot of work and a lot of understanding that men should be given the space to speak about their emotions and their feelings and everything they have going on in their day just as much as a woman should. It shouldn't be that you have to earn this space. It should be something that we just normalize and give everybody access to, is a free, safe, and respectful space to speak our minds. Um, so yeah, I highly encourage you to help our men rewrite this narrative of machismo and needing to be the providers and the protectors. If you subscribe to like a traditional relationship, right, where the man is the breadwinner, the woman is the the caretaker of the home, I have no problem with that. That's not a problem. Like, it's not my cup of tea, but it's not a problem. What I'm saying is more specific to allowing the people we care about to just have a space to be who they need to be. um to not necessarily, we're not saying like, I don't want to say the word to be or feel weak, but sometimes we need to feel weak. We need to have somebody that we trust and we love, that we can bring our guard down with, and that will allow us to still feel safe in that space. And what I'm trying to promote is allowing the men in our lives to also have an opportunity to access that space. Um, and we can do this by rewriting the idea of machismo. What does that mean? Promoting the idea of caballerismo. If you haven't heard this term is kind of like the the more positive version of machismo. It's yes, we are focusing on still like you are being a protector, but it's a more community focused version of masculinity where we can ask for help, we can ask for support. The men in our lives can reach out to other men, women, whoever, whenever, however, excuse me, but just allowing themselves the opportunity to reach out for help when they need it. Um, right? If you've heard of that term before, being a caballero, what does that mean? It's being respectful. It's being loving and caring. Um, it has a very positive connotation in general because it's striving for this idea that we can be respectful, loving, protecting, all these things, but we can be doing it in a way that's sustainable, right? That allows the men in our lives to continue doing it because they feel like they have the community and the support behind them. Um, this is in contrast to the idea of machismo, where it's just like you gotta suck it up, hold it all in, do it yourself, don't ask for help, drink your problems away, do whatever you gotta do to just keep on going and be the provider. But You don't have to engage with your children. You don't have to engage with your wife. You don't have to show them respect, love, and admiration. And you don't deserve those things yourself. Right. So it's really trying to shift this focus from a more negative to a more positive way that we address um, masculinity and mental health in general with our male presenting population. Another thing is we want to normalize um, therapy. I know I'm the pot calling the kettle black. I love therapy so much. I am a therapist. I advocate for therapy all the time, every day. It's what I do. Um, but very specifically, I want to talk about therapy with our male presenting individuals. It is so, so difficult to get a man through the door when it comes to therapy. And I want to start creating a space where we normalize this, normalizing that it's okay to ask for help, especially with those that are actually like um, struggling significantly and need that extra layer of support that maybe just, your friends or your family are not providing. And I've seen an influx of men coming um, through my doors and with the private practice and within the community mental health space. And they just are just frozen in fear of this idea that they cannot be providers, or they're not good enough providers, or they're not taking care of their family well enough. And I really work hard with the men that I see to let them know that when you walk through those doors, the act of you taking care of yourself is a way that you are being a better provider, because you are taking care of your needs in a way that is healthy, it's respectful, it's getting to the core root of the problem. And when you address those things, it allows you to show up as a more engaged and healthy version of yourself when you come to, raising your children, engaging with your spouse, being a family member, a son, a child, whoever you are in whatever space you take. Coming to therapy allows you to show up better in those ways. It allows you to be the best version of yourself. So I highly encourage, and I really want to start normalizing and validating the experience of men coming to therapy. So if you know anybody that needs therapy, right? You're like, hey, you really need to seek help. Starting to talk about it in a way that's just normal. Hey, we don't want to tell them like, hey, you really need to go see a therapist. Um, but talking about mental health in a way that is normalizing that, hey, it's not a big deal if you need to talk to somebody. It's, seeking help is normal. It's just like going to the doctor, right? We want to start having these conversations that normalizes this idea so that it's not so stigmatizing for a man to ask for help, right? So this is going to be kind of two-sided. It can be family members talking to their loved ones and just talking about it in a way that normalizes this. But as therapists as well, is creating a space that welcomes our men just as much as we welcome our women. Um, because sometimes we as therapists have preconceived notions of men and masculinity and things like that, and it can be hard for us to kind of separate those ideas. So, we can tackle it in a lot of different ways, right? Through a community lens, through an individualistic lens, whatever way we choose to do it, really emphasizing that therapy is just a normal part of our lives. Um, it's okay to ask for help, and everybody should have access to it. Um, Another thing I want to um, kind of throw out as a prompt to the listeners is, let's say more of a challenge, is that I want you to engage the men in your life actively. I want you to ask them, how are you doing? Truly, genuinely, not the superficial, I'm fine, it's all good, no big deal, those kind of things, but genuinely engaging the men in our lives to have a deep conversation about how they're doing emotionally and holding space for them, listening, actively engaging with them, summarizing what they're saying, And then, if they're interested, you can offer feedback. If they're not, just be an active listener. Just be an active participant in that conversation and giving them the space that they need to feel seen. This is hard, right? This is not something we're taught, especially in the way our society works, especially as Hispanos. We are not just, taught to be active listeners. A lot of us are having like seven different conversations at once. We're chismeando about this, and then we talk about that, and then next thing you know, you are like four conversations deep into something completely unrelated to what you started about. And I really want to caution to try not to do this when we're talking about mental health. Don't let them divert, don't let them talk about other things. Really try to emphasize wanting to learn about them, their needs, their wants, um, and how we as family members, as loved ones, we can support them in that journey. Um, as clinicians, that's our charge as well, is being open and engaging with our clients in a way that facilitates a safe, comfortable, and culturally responsive space for our male presenting individuals. Um, but yeah, so those are like the key takeaways that I have. I'd love to hear from our community. How do you want to use this information to support your loved ones, to support the men in your lives, to really show up in a unique way that allows the people we love to also feel seen and respected? So I'd love it if you tell me in the comments, what are the ways that you try to practice giving the men in your life space to do the things that they need to do and to feel seen. Um, Please drop them in the comments, DM me, whatever you feel that would be, most comfortable for you. Um, Sorry, you guys heard all my doggies. Somebody rang my doorbell. But that's all I have for today, community. If you need anything, reach out to me. But otherwise, have a wonderful evening. Okay, bye.